everybody. Jason,
Patrick.
Collaborative Coaching, and we're here to talk today about Patrick's preparations and racing at Tulsa Tough. First, Pat, so for those of us that maybe don't know about Tulsa Tough, can you just tell us a little bit about the race weekend? What are the courses like? Who shows up?
Yeah, Tulsa Tough is one of the bigger crits on the calendar. It's been around, I want to say, just over 10 years. It's 3 days, and it's one of the unique race weekends where there's pro field and then Cat 1-2 field. And so we made the decision way early on to race the 1-2 and really go for it. And try to get some results, whereas we're slightly less experienced in the bigger pro crit. So we decided we're just go all in and try to get some wins in the 1-2 field. So this early on was a super big target for me. And the course itself, the third day.
There's 3 races though?
Yeah, 3 days. The first day is pretty technical, or is not technical. It's no breaks. Super fast. Day 2 has a bit of a hill, a lot of wind, and I want to say like 8 corners. And then the final day, which is Crybaby Hill, which is the day when you hear Tulsa Tough, it's Crybaby Hill is what you're thinking of. And it's a climb and then a false flat and then turn to finish. So it's a pretty tricky climb. And I think Tulsa, more than anything else, is known for the crazy scene on Crybaby Hill. If you've never seen it, look it up. It's like nothing I've ever done. It's absolutely nuts. The town is super behind the race. It's a very, very fun experience.
How does it compare to that time that you rode up Alpe d'Huez during the Tour de France? Like more people than Dutch Corner or less people than Dutch Corner?
Yeah, definitely more.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely more.
So Crybaby Hill happens on the 3rd day, super tough climb. How did the race go?
So the hill itself is pretty short. It's shorter than I'd expected, even based on my research. But it's a big field, and so everybody stages really, really early for this race. We staged in the back because we were trying to stay cool, so we didn't stage super early. First few laps are just moving up. So just, lap 1 is move up as many spots as you can. And it took me 3-4 laps. I started moving up and I got caught behind a crash. I had to take a free lap and got put back in towards the middle back. I got back up front within the first 20 minutes or so. But on lap 1, I believe, a guy that I was on the break with on Friday, who I knew was riding well all week, went up the road and nobody chased. And so he got a gap right away.
My recollection is that he didn't even really put in a big attack. He kind of just got a gap on the hill and then was away.
He just kind of got a little bit of a gap, and then people looked around. If you're looking around on that false flat, everybody goes over the hill about the same speed, just because of how steep it is. It really hurts guys at the back of the field, but if you're in the front 20 guys, you can only go so hard just because there's people, and then the crowd is crazy. So he got a gap. He got away. Meanwhile, I'm trying to move up. I crash. Go back to the mid-pack. I finally get to a point where I'm racing again, and I hear there's a guy up the road. And so, I throttled a few times mid-race. I think it strung it out. And guys were popping left and right, like off the back of the group. But when it came down to it, actually, a couple guys rolled away with about, I want to say, 8 laps to go. And I bridged up to them, and we went over the hill really hard, and we were gone. And what I didn't realize, it's so chaotic. There's so much noise. There's so many people. We actually came within like 3-4 seconds of catching the leader.
Really close to pulling him back.
And a guy from our group bridged up to him, and they ended up going 1-2 while we dicked around for 3rd place. It was a group of people. Everybody seemed to be waiting for the sprint, and nobody wanted to pull. I mean, we was right there, but for all we knew, I mean, that guy up the road was a dropped rider. It was really, really hard to tell.
Mm.
And everybody's
Mm-hmm.
gassed, so everybody's
Yeah.
not really wanting to put in an effort that's going to hurt themselves. What if you get attacked before next time up the hill? And anyway, so it came.
So tactically, you were kind of like stuck.
Tactically, I felt a little pigeonholed because I didn't really have many options. I thought that I was going to have to just gamble and wait for a sprint. I felt like if I went early, those guys were strong enough that they would have just covered it right away. So in the final lap, I did put an effort in on the hill and didn't get away. And so we came I was second wheel going into the final corner, and the kid Cade got first wheel and got in front of me, and then the other guy took a better line than me, so I went third out of that group into the sprint and passed one person, so I ended up fifth of the day. Yeah. So I mean,
fantastic result.
I was still
obviously.
super pumped.
Yeah,
and we did a top 10 on Saturday, and I got second on Friday, so it was a good race. And I was happy with the preparation, especially considering like the depth of field is, even though it was a 1-2 field, everybody's super strong.
Yeah. So let's talk about the preparation. We've heard a little bit about this hill that's in Crybaby, and before we talk about the details of kind of how you prepared for that specific feature of the weekend, talk to us about what was your general plan, like big picture. 2 months leading up to Tulsa, what were you doing?
Sure. So April had a couple races, and I was still finding my legs. I didn't have a great winter because I got sick, and the weather was really crappy. So I'd started finding my legs in April when I'm thinking about this prep for Tulsa. And so initially I did some testing to kind of figure out where I was sitting and what I needed to work on. And I felt that there's two really important components to being ready for this race. I had to be able to race my best on day 3. That was really important. And I had to have a strong enough aerobic foundation that when it came down to kick it in the end, because I'm going to rely on my kick. And in a field like this, I'm not thinking I can ride away from these guys. So I'm going to be relying on my kick. I want to have a really strong kick.
Yep.
And I want to be able to have enough of that left at the end of a race. So the aerobic component was really important. And then the strength of my kick.
You're working on building out your aerobic component, stretching it out duration-wise.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking like improving your FTP and your time to exhaustion.
Mm-hmm.
And then working on your kick. That's functional reserve capacity, short, hard efforts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what? Yeah.
Yeah. So
big picture still.
I did a workout a month or so out, which was right after a couple races. I was starting to feel fit, so I did a TTE, a test of time to exhaustion at threshold.
So that's TTE, your time to exhaustion. That's how long you can hold your functional threshold power.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Basically, how long I can hold a max effort, and then the following day, which is another thing I want to do. I want to have a max ride and then see how well I held up the next day. Part of my initial thoughts. I did a 20 of 1 minute on, 1 minute off, VO2 plus efforts.
Okay. And what was like? Why that 20 efforts of 1 on, 1 off? What about that was in your what about Tulsa was in your mind when you're thinking like I got to go do this 21 minute efforts?
Well, when you look at the profile in Tulsa, it's pretty much an on-off effort. You're either coasting or you're on for a minute, or a little bit less. The hill's steep, but really I was focusing on a minute because give or take 5-10 seconds. Mm-hmm. From the start of the steep part of the hill until the end of the false flat, it's just about a minute. So okay. I wanted to see how long I could go on my own before I cracked, and as kind of a baseline.
Okay. So this is about kind of like benchmarking your own performance or setting a baseline so you know like what you can do
Exactly.
And then
Yeah.
and then once you know what you can do, then you can start to think about specific workouts to do to improve on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So we're going to talk about one specific workout that you did exactly to improve on your 1 minute power. So this is a 6 by 1 minute essentially full gas for a minute.
Yeah.
But what's
full
interesting
sprint.
about that workout is that you gave yourself a full recovery between efforts. We're talking like 12, 14 minutes between 1 minute efforts, which is very different from the workout you did to benchmark where you were doing like 1 minute on, 1 minute off. So why do you give yourself so much recovery time when you're doing that like 6 by 1 FRC workout?
So when you're working on repeatability, you want to compress intervals together. You're focusing more on the aerobic component of doing these intervals. When you're working on your absolute power, your strength, your one-off maximum effort, you really have to allow yourself a greater amount of time to recover. You know, the ideal amount of rest is at least 10 to 20 times the duration of your effort. So that seems like forever, but that's when you're really going to see improvement in that short duration power. If you just try to stack these efforts without fully resting, you're never going to go hard enough to get the stimulus that you'll actually need to improve upon your 1 minute power.
That's right. Being able to do the intervals at a high enough intensity in order to induce the physiological adaptations that you want in order to improve.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you don't give yourself enough recovery time, then you're not going to go hard enough to induce the adaptations that you want. In other words, you're not going to get faster.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll just be working more of an aerobic component, which is better served with about 100 other kinds of workouts than that.
Cool. So then, in the week leading up to Tulsa, you did something a little unique. I'm calling it like a polarized VO2 max week, where you did 2 recovery days followed by a really intensive VO2 max workout, and then you did some more. You kind of repeated that a few times. So tell us about that week and why. What was your approach?
Yeah. So I wanted to cover my my aerobic fitness basis further out than the intensity component for Tulsa. So I thought that it would be really important for me to come. Tulsa is all about having really feeling fresh. I wanted to come into Tulsa very fresh. Mm-hmm. I was a little worried. I almost felt like I was erring on the side of too fresh. But so I had if you backtrack about 5 weeks, I had like an 18-hour week, then a 22-hour week, and then a recovery week, and then straight into another 22-hour week. And in that last week, I did a lot of threshold. I was sweet spot in the heat, doing 60, 90-minute sweet spot, and then piled that directly into a really intense weekend with Brendan climbing in Chattanooga. And we really just throttled on each other, and it was hard. It was really hard. So that to me was checking my aerobic preparation. So then I rested, and the polarized VO2 max I felt like I needed to rest, so I wanted to do a recovery day, an easy day, like an off day, a recovery day, and then a very hard VO2 max day, and then a light endurance day, another recovery day, and then a VO2 max day. And then, so that was my 6 days, and then I did an off day, and then my final race specific day, which was I did about 60 minutes of sweet spot right into 8 times, and there's a hill in Nashville, it's 12th Street, and it's very steep, and it's about 30 seconds in your smallest gear, sprinting, 700 watts, like really hard. So I did 60 minutes.
It'd probably be more like 1,200 watts for me. But
yeah. Well, I mean,
it was it was coming at the end of a hard workout, so 700 watts.
So the idea there was, okay, you're doing this an hour of aerobic work, and which you're draining your battery, and then when it comes time to race, you're not going to be fresh at the end of the Tulsa of Crybaby Hill, 6 laps to go. You're not going to be fresh. You're going to be hurting, but you got to make sure you've done the prep that maybe hopefully the other person hadn't quite done, and you're ready to go that extra
just
couple pedal
percent.
strokes. Yeah. So that was my thought process there. Shout out to Brendan for the idea on that workout.
Yeah. I mean, so there's obviously a physiological component to that preparation, but it seems like there might also be a real mental component to that preparation of like going deep into a workout where you don't have the excitement and the adrenaline of racing, and then forcing yourself to go deep when you're tired.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember that ride specifically because it was like 100 degrees, and I went to the airstrip to make it even harder on myself because the airstrip, you just bake. It's basically the heat comes off the pavement and you're just baking
just totally
for an
exposed.
hour. And so it really, really stresses your aerobic system. And then I went straight to this climb and just hit it 8 times. And I came home and I was just like shaking, so tired. But that was it. I knew that was it. That was the last one. I really had to give it all because I always feel 5 days, 6 days before a key event, you really need to have an absolute 100% effort that's race specific.
Yep.
That's always something I do for myself and my athletes.
Yeah. It's all about specificity.
Yeah, when it comes down to peaking for a specific event, the specificity is king for sure.
I'm gonna drop a surprise question on you.
Okay. I'm ready.
I didn't tell you about this one. If you were gonna go back and knowing what you know now, what would you do differently, if anything?
I mean, maybe being able to stay on, like maybe doing a series of 2-minute efforts too, maybe full lap efforts. So maybe if I felt like my move was going to be bringing it to a sprint, and maybe if I had planned ahead and said maybe my move is going to be bridging, if I had one more option, giving myself another playbook, like one more move. So maybe a 1.5 lap all-out bridge.
Yeah.
Maybe I could have gone away and not taken anybody with me and gotten up to that guy and been on the podium.
One thing I always think about in working with my athletes is that you have to, as a coach, you have to make certain choices about what to work on. And
Prioritize.
There's just not enough time in people's training schedules to work on everything all the time, right? So you're leading up to a big event, and you've got to like prioritize. You've got to make your best guesses about kind of, you look at the course, like Crybaby's got this 1-minute hill, and you kind of focus your choices on that. So in some ways, like, asking you that question is asking you to like second guess the choices that you made, which, I think you made good choices. But then we always learn something. So
well, that's the whole point. You always got to go back to the drawing board over and over and over, because there's 100 good ways to get to the same solution, which is ideally finding a win. You could find it 100 different ways, and they're all the right. There's no perfect way. It's just formulating the way that works on the day.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on Tulsa training? Going back next year?
I think going back.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Got a fire in your belly?
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully with a better January, February. And I can be a little bit further along than I was when I started that prep. But, it's part of it.
That's life.
Yeah.
It's bike racing. Cool, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Any questions? Always hit us up, ccg.bike or info@ccg.bike. Hit us up on the Facebook group.
If you have an event you're specifically preparing for, reach out to us and we'll talk you through on a few of our thoughts and how to get you there. We strongly believe that our approach gets you where you want to be faster than our competitors. So reach out. What are you waiting for?
Cheers.